This is about ensuring that this doesn't happen to anyone, that we are all free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness.
I think you're going to impact the world now in a new way. I really, really do.
Be open to as many inputs as possible and think about, what am I missing?
You really want to be part of the solution, and you're putting yourself out there. So thank you. If I don't say that enough, thank you. Hi, I'm Jim Fielding. Welcome to Ask for an Answer. Hello, kind and beautiful people. I am so excited about recording today's episode because there's a little bit of payback in today's episode, because I was lucky enough to meet our guest by appearing on a podcast we realized, probably over 2 years ago, to your point. I'm thrilled that my guest, Bree, is here today. I just want to set a little context before they introduce themselves. We're recording this at the beginning of March. It happens to be the week where we've just entered a new war, I guess it's fair to say, with Iran in partnership with Israel. So I'm going to get into that. You won't really be hearing and seeing this until April, but I just wanted to give our listeners and viewers some context of where we are. The title of this podcast is Ask for an Answer. And I know that today's guest has so many answers that she's going to provide, but also ask some really probing questions. So thank you, Bree, so much for being here. Please introduce yourself. Tell us where you are today, because that's fascinating. And we'll go from there.
Well, Jim, it is a pleasure to join you. It was so much fun to have you on Forged in Fire when I was part of that show. And to talk about queer leadership was amazing. But today I'm actually joining you from Sperryville, Virginia, which is a town just on the edge of Shenandoah National Park. Because I'm out getting to meet people and getting to know what is going to be the new Virginia 11 as I am in the middle of a run for Congress as part of my post-military career, which I'm sure we're going to get into why that is.
Yes.
The military said, I am the wrong kind of American. And I would say it's not the military that said that. It was this administration that said, I am the wrong kind of American. And
it was. I mean, it was. And that, I'm going to go there next. But okay, so it's officially District 11, because the last time I talked to you, the redistricting was still going on. So I want to make sure I know. It's called a district, right? You're running in a district.
I am running in Virginia's 11th. What we have right now, we're about to start in 2 days, is actually voting to make sure that is the district. We have the map now, and until April 21st, we're going to be voting to approve those new maps. So I am really excited to be running here.
Amazing. I'm so excited for the community. But now, okay, let's tell the story of why Bree is even available to run for Congress in 2026. Because when we met 2 years ago, and you and I have stayed in touch over the years, if I talked to you a year ago, I don't think this was on your bingo card, I will say. I don't know when it came into being, but when the idea formed, but I think I know. So I would love you to share that story.
Yeah, I had served in the military for 23 years. I joined after 9/11 because I had graduated college that year with my degree in aerospace engineering. I thought I was going to help humanity expand into the stars, see and make Star Trek a reality. So I was applying for jobs at places like NASA or one of the big contractors, and that's where I thought I was going to be in my life. But we got attacked in September, and my life changed like that. I wanted to give back. I wanted to be part of something larger than myself, and my country was calling. I joined, and I served 18 years in the Air Force before moving over into the Space Force, where I spent the last 5 years of my career being part of that wonderful opportunity to stand up a brand new service, create a new culture where everyone can contribute. And we're also working with some of the most amazing technology out there and the technology that doesn't even exist yet that we were designing and developing. That was really incredible. And so I expected to stay in the military. And if we were in an alternate timeline, maybe I would have been serving for another 10 or more years because I loved it. I loved the people around me, and we got to do things that protected Americans at home and all around the world.
And you were making impact.
Yeah.
And remind us what rank you were at.
So I was a colonel in the Space Force. In my last couple of jobs, I helped stand up our policy for how we did acquisition. That's build, buy, develop satellites and spacecraft of the future. And then in my final job, I defined the requirements for what capabilities we needed in the future, 5, 10, 20 years down the road, saying this is what we're going to need to stay ahead of our adversaries and provide the best capability possible for our joint force and for the country. And it was really exciting to be on the leading edge of that and what we were going to see down the road.
Yeah. Okay. I've got about 14 questions for that. But so why? I know the answer. I'm trying to think how to ask this. I'm not setting it up, but okay. Why are you no longer doing that? Is probably the best way to say that. I mean, so that you share that part of the story.
Well, a week into the Trump administration, an executive order called Prioritizing Military Excellence and Readiness came out. And it labeled people like me and thousands of others who just happened to be highly qualified transgender people serving in the military. It said that we were undisciplined, dishonorable liars who lack the humility required for military service. And then it went on to say all these other things about how we didn't meet standards, despite 10 years of proving just how well we met or exceeded those standards. So that led to a number of court cases that challenged the policy, where at the district court level, the government got its butt handed to it. And the judge said, it is our service records that are Exhibit A, proving every argument the government makes wrong. Yet the government was able to take an emergency appeal to the Supreme Court, who allowed them to enact the policy while they were trying to make it through the appellate level and back to the Supreme Court on the merits of the argument. So by the time that was going to happen, all of us were going to get kicked out. And that was the decision of this government and this Supreme Court that said, thanks, you're gone. You are the problem, despite no evidence.
Yeah. And for those of us that were watching this, it was infuriating and maddening and sad. And I mean, that's like when you were talking, I just kind of humped my shoulders over, because it's almost like it makes you want to cry, but it also makes you so mad, because I think of how talented and committed you were, and the impact you're making, and how many other people like you were also impacted. So did you officially retire, or is that still going on? I've lost the thread on that.
Because I had over 20 years of service, I was allowed to retire because they were trying to get as many people out as expeditiously as possible. Yes. But even with that, I spent 7 months on administrative leave before that became official. And many others are fighting to this day and going through all sorts of unpleasant, dehumanizing processes on their way out the door. People are fighting as hard as they can to stay in and serve, because that's what they know. That's what they love. They want to be there. Life. That is their life. They want to be there for the people on either side of them. So I think something you alluded to earlier when you said, well, why this now? I didn't think about running for office. I didn't think about anything other than continuing to serve my country until the Supreme Court said there wasn't any other choice. I was going to be fired one way or another. So I took the way out that I could make as much of a difference as possible after my service, because no matter what it was going to be, whether it was advocacy work, defending democracy, or running for office myself, this is about ensuring that this doesn't happen to anyone, that we are all free to pursue life, liberty, and happiness, and make sure that we can be the best Americans we can be, both as individuals and as a country.
One of the things I've so enjoyed getting to know you is, how incredible incredibly humble you are and incredibly compassionate you are, because to move through this with the grace that you've moved through this, and I watched you move through this, many people in your life watch you move through this, it had to be the biggest jumble of emotions ever. But in a weird way, when you and I talked on your podcast, I talked about the first lesson in my book is control the controllable, but leave space for the possible. And what you just articulated, I'm kind of getting teary thinking about, was you controlled what you could control, because there was so much of it that was out of your control. And because you did, and you moved through it with such power and grace, new doors and windows opened. And I'm sure at the time they weren't always readily open and apparent, but you've done it. So, I mean, first off, I thank you. I feel so bad for everything you've gone through, and other people like you, your peers and your colleagues and your comrades in arms. But at the same time, I'm selfishly excited for the people of the 11th District of Virginia. And quite honestly, United States, because I think you're going to impact the world now in a new way. I really, really do.
Well, if among the many reasons to run, and for I think a lot of trans service members in this next phase of life, is, look, we're going to show this administration what happens when you kick out a bunch of highly motivated badasses and you don't expect it to come back and bite you in the butt. No, we're going to go out into the world. We're going to do incredible things, whether that's in business, in politics, in any other endeavor. We're going to go make a difference, because if the uniform gave us anything, it's the courage to do what's right and the courage to stand up for others, to live up to our oath to the Constitution. That's what we're doing this for. That's who we are. And that's how we're going to make a difference going forward. Yeah,
I mean, it's so interesting. I mean, karma's a bitch, right? I mean, they trained you, educated you, and I'm so proud, because of course I have your book, because we love the book, right? But Forging Queer Leaders. But I hope people can see this coin that you send after we were a guest on Forged in Fire, this amazing coin. And I keep it on my desk, because you were forged in fire. You are forged in fire. It's like you're forming now. I mean, you're developing new skills. You're developing new, self-awareness, new techniques, new everything. I mean, I'm so fascinated by what you're doing. So before we move on to the campaign, because I want to do that, when was there a moment? Was there like a dark moment or a bright moment where you were like, I am going to run? Like, do you remember, like, there was like a light switch that went on? I'm so fascinated by that.
Well, once the Supreme Court made that decision, I had to have the conversation with my wife. I'm like, what? Yeah. What's next? Like, because this was our career.
Yeah, you're not done. You're not done.
I probably, without that, would have been moving on to a new assignment this past summer. But now it's like, well, one, where do we live? Because you spend a military career bouncing around forever, and that was the first. Like, where are we going to be? And that choice was easy. Virginia was the only place that I had been stationed twice, and when I came back that second time, it was like, well, this is home. And so while we had ties to other places we could have gone, we're like, no, we're staying. We love it here. The kids have fantastic schools, and we've got great healthcare. This is where we want to stay, around the people and the places that we love. So now that we're here, what next? And again, it was kind of those three choices of, do I go work for an advocacy organization at the national or the local level? Do I join some organizations that are doing the work to defend democracy and protect our voting rights and other things? Or is it that I should run? And it so turned out that right at that time, the congressman who represented the district announced his retirement, that he wasn't going to run again. Wow.
Yeah, that's a signal. Yeah, and that's a signal.
Then sadly, he died a week later.
Oh.
And there was a special election. And There was no way that I was going to be out in time to run in the special election. But it turns out the way it worked with both our redistricting and the opportunity that was ahead, I wanted to run. I thought this was the way I could both make a difference for the people of Virginia and giving them a candidate that represented something different on the Democratic side, and for so many others to give them hope that we can get through this. Because a big part of my career was showing folks that people like me, any American really, can thrive in the most difficult of circumstances. And if we could do it in the military, we can do it in politics, we can do it anywhere. And to say, yeah, this is the vision that we should have for America. Not that just we as individuals can be better tomorrow than we are today, but that's where we should be as a country. What kind of vision can we put out there that says, here's where we can go to? Because we're seeing right now with this administration an unparalleled destruction. But with destruction comes opportunity. What did we do after the Civil War? We had a rebirth of freedom in this nation. We amended the Constitution. We did big things that said, we have an expanded definition of what it means to be an American and what it means to be free. That's the vision I want to put out there right now that says you can and should be able to be the best version of yourself, just like our country can. We are that unfinished experiment in democracy and representation. How do we be better for the next 250 years than we were for the first 250?
Yeah, amazing. And I love, because I'm a lifelong learner. I was a political science major. I'm a history buff. I love that you bring up the Civil War. Those periods of Reconstruction after, unfortunately, World War I, World War II, Civil War. Even the Vietnam War to a certain extent. Those periods of Reconstruction and kind of revisiting, and to your point, rebirth in a way, are some of the most pivotal moments in our history. And there's many days I wake up, you and I were talking before we started recording, and I try not to look at the news first thing. Like I try to take the dogs for a walk, have some coffee. Like I try to ease into the day a little bit. But so many days I'm just shaking my head and saying, what? Like, what? I can't even believe this headline. What does this headline say? And it's been since the inauguration day, since the first executive orders that came out within, 12 hours of inauguration, I feel like we've been drinking from a fire hose and trying to keep up. And I think honestly, that's intentional, but I'm so grateful that there's people like you that are willing to step up and raise their hand and say, I want to be part of the solution. I'm not going to just sit on the sidelines and point fingers and say, that's wrong. That's wrong. Like you really want to be part of the solution and you're putting yourself out there. So thank you. If I don't say that enough, thank you.
Well, I appreciate it.
I'm thrilled.
It is tough when there are 7 or 8 fresh hells or outrages thrust upon us every day.
That's a great
by this administration. What do you pay attention to? And if anyone is out there thinking, this doesn't affect me, I'm insulated from it. Talk about privilege. If you think it doesn't affect you, you're wrong. This affects all of us. And right now, there are so many Americans out there that are afraid. And no American should be afraid of what their own government is going to do to them. Instead, we should be confident in what it can do for us to make our lives easier, to make our kids' lives better. But I tap into my family history on this stuff. And if I can share a story, this was
please.
Just about 18 months ago, October 2024. I took my mom out to 2 days away. I said, I will meet you anywhere in the country, Mom. This is your Mother's Day present. And she chose Maine. And I met her. I picked her up from the airport, and we went to a little seaside park because we got some lobster rolls. We sat down at the picnic table. And she asked me, what's your plan to flee? And that was not the question that I was expecting.
Yes.
But she was thinking to our family history, her grandfather, her father, who got out of Germany in 1936 on a midnight train to Paris the day before the SS was coming to arrest the family. And my great grandfather had waited because he was an Imperial German war hero from World War I. He thought the uniform would protect him, that Nazis were just a blip, but it wasn't until he saw two people hanged naked right outside his hotel that said, "This is what happens when you pollute the Aryan race." He said, "Okay, it's time to go." And he and my grandfather came here. They made a better life. My grandfather fought in World War II as soon as he was old enough to go back, was a hero in so many regards. And he gave me that kind of freedom and opportunity that I had. So the only answer I could give my mom was, "Mom, I'm not going anywhere. I'm here to fight because the freedoms that I had should be there for my kids, should be there for my grandkids. And there is no child in America that should wonder, do I have to be on that plane? Do I have to be on that boat? Because if I'm not, my government might hurt me."
And when you told her that, so it was your mother's father we're talking about that fought in World War II, right? Okay, perfect. Okay, I love that that's what you said to her. What did she say? Did she say, "I'm proud of you and that's good"? Or did she say...
She was nervous. She thought maybe I had the same blindness that my great-grandfather had, that the uniform would protect me. And I might. Maybe I do. But if the uniform gave me anything, as I mentioned earlier, it's the courage to stay and to fight. Because if we don't hold the line now, yes, maybe I will pay the price. Maybe my family will pay the price, but it will be hundreds of thousands or millions of other families that pay the price. So if people want to ask, well, why didn't those good Germans do something in the 1930s? Ask yourself, what are you doing right now? Because we are the people that can stop this when enough of us say no to this government.
No, this is so important, Bree, because I'm getting this is going to be my most emotional podcast ever, I think. But I've been sticking it out there and using my platform, using my voice, and I think I've really had to go after, frankly, our own queer community, Bree, because I think there's a sense of entitlement in our community. And it started to happen. It's interesting that the time when you were with your mother in Maine, it started to happen during the campaign, before even the election. And everybody started talking about Plan B, right? Or all of a sudden people were like, we bought an investment house in the Caribbean or in Montenegro or in Portugal. Like, you would start to hear these things at cocktail parties or dinners. And it was definitely the privileged, frankly, white gay people, mostly gay male couples. And I was starting to get in a lot of arguments because I said, if we all go, if we all say, you know what, I'm going to move to Portugal, I'm going to move to Italy, which, by the way, you have freedom of choice and God bless you for having the means to do it. But if we all go, who's going to stay and fight for the next generation? Who's going to use their voice or their LinkedIn platform or their position in business or their position in government or their position in nonprofit if our entire generation flees, right? And it's still going on. And again, I'm not, to any of the listeners and viewers, everybody has freedom of choice. It's up to you. I had the very similar conversation with my husband. I mean, as you know, I'm married to a Black man. So we have a double qualifier of being a gay couple, but also interracial in the South. And it has been a really interesting time for the LGBTQ community. It's been an unfortunately not great time for the Black community at the same time. We have that intersectionality. And we had the discussion and we had the means. And we, like you, said, no, we're going to stay. We're going to be here in Atlanta. We're going to represent. We're going to fight to reelect Senator Ossoff, as you know, is running at the same time you are. All of those things, I mean, are choices people make. And again, I believe in freedom of choice. I just would ask everyone, particularly those in our community in positions of influence and in positions of entitlement and privilege, to think about using that privilege the way that you're using your privilege, which is, I'm going to try and protect the community now and for the future. And by protecting our own community, we're actually protecting the world. We're actually protecting the country. But those conversations are going on. I mean, they are 100% going on.
Yeah, I'm absolutely with you that if people feel an imminent threat to their livelihood, their well-being, their mental health, whatever it is, you do need to take care of yourself first before you can take care of others. That is the same advice we get anytime we get on an airplane.
Exactly.
And so I don't begrudge people that if they needed to protect themselves or their family in some way. But we are still in this together, and I hope this can be a place that those folks can return to. And if they have the resources to do so, to help us fight here and make sure that as many of us as possible get through this, and we let our values be reflected in America's enduring values. Because as you pointed out, those are exported into the world. And if this country falls into a place that is only available to a certain kind of American, we are already putting out values that drive LGBTQ hatred in huge portions of the world. And if we criminalize or erase trans people or LGBT plus folks in this country, that will happen in more places, and it already is.
It will. You know, it's interesting. I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to ask you some questions, because we got married last year, and we had, within 4 months, which is going to sound like privilege, I'm just saying it, we were in Europe twice. We went on a honeymoon, and then we went to Portugal. And then for Christmas, we decided, instead of giving each other gifts, we wanted to give each other an experience. And we chose to go to two of our favorite cities, Paris and London, after the holidays. So like first 10 days of January. And something happened to us on that trip that had never happened to me as an American traveling. And I've been traveling overseas since I was 16. My parents first took us overseas to Europe when I was 16. And you'll remember post 9/11, there's times where the State Department would send out, because I was traveling for work a lot for Disney and DreamWorks and stuff, and they would send out these warnings about, like, don't wear American brands, don't wear like university, like don't wear flags, don't wear university, like don't wear identifiers. Go basically
tell people you're Canadian.
Yes, exactly. Right. Like, you're Canadian. And well, of course, we would get like those State Department notices, particularly, Disney and DreamWorks, like they'd send it to you if they knew you were traveling. But I never and I've been everywhere. I've been around the world, and I never really felt ill at ease. I never really felt compromised in any way, is probably the best word. And I'm a talker, you know that, and I'm a kind person. And so when I get in a cab or an Uber, or I'm at a restaurant, or I'm talking to people at the hotel, of course you get into conversation. And for the first time, I'm going to be 61 in a month. So for the first time in, let's say, 40 years of traveling, people would say, where are you from? And we would say Atlanta, Georgia, and we'd say that's the South if they didn't really know geography. And for the first time ever, Bree, I'm telling you, like, I can count on more. It took me 2 hands to count. More times people would be like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. That must be really hard. And it literally caught me by surprise, because I would say, well, what do you mean? They're like, oh, it must be a really hard time to be an American. It must be a really hard time to be a gay couple if they realized Joe and I were a couple, right? Or, and I'd never really it was almost like pity, to be honest, right? And I'd never really experienced that before. And I found it so shocking, but I also think again, being the lifelong learner and the student in me, I was like, this is how fast perceptions can change. Because prior to that, if I said I was from Los Angeles or from Atlanta, 9 times out of 10, people would say, I'm dying to go there. That's on my list of places to go. I can't wait to go visit. I can't wait to go see Hollywood, or I can't wait to, Atlanta's where the Olympics were in 96. Like, you would get that kind of response. And now within, 12, 13, 14 months of this administration, it's completely changed perceptions around the world. I just wanted to share that story because it was so relevant to what you were talking about. Hi, everyone. We're back. We had a little technical difficulty, and I just told my story about my recent trips to Europe, and Bree was sharing some fascinating insights. So I'm going to flip it back over to you, Bree, to talk about your comments on my story, basically.
Yeah, I think what was happening is the rest of the world is saying about America what we always said about other countries. Like through the Cold War, we always said this isn't about the people of Russia, this is about the government of the Soviet Union. Or today, we don't say the people of Iran are bad. We said the regime is brutal and is killing its own citizens. But people are thinking that about Americans, that, your government is terrible, but maybe you aren't, at least until you tell us a little bit more about yourself. But then also to have that kind of internalized as well. I recently talked with someone on the phone who had also left the service after about 10 or 11 years, and they had just gone to an event at their son's preschool. And at the event, their son was the flag holder. And they said, "Mom, it's just like the flag you had on your shoulder." And she said, "All I felt was shame, because throughout my time in the military, what I had been told is that no matter what I was doing, no matter how large a part I played, it mattered to the end result." And then realizing that applied to the good things that we did, and now to the bad. And she was thinking about the boat strikes, where in the Caribbean and in the Pacific, we are operating somewhere between murder and war crimes, and none of those spaces are good. And she's like, I'm part of that, and I can't be anymore. And it was the same for me. Like, even if I had been able to stay, I never signed up to be a part of the Department of War. That's not who we are. It is about defending our values. It is about putting good into the world and having that reflected back to us. But that's not where we are right now as Americans, particularly traveling abroad.
Yeah, it is. And words matter. I mean, that quote rebranding of the Department of Defense into Department of War, you're absolutely right. And I worry so much about brain drain. I mean, there was people that were forced out like you were, and then the brain drain of people who are like, I can't do this anymore. Like, this is not the job that I signed up for. This is not the democracy that I chose to defend. And I worry about that as well.
Oh, and that's not just the Department of Defense. Across the entire federal government, we lost 11 times as many PhDs over the past year that we hired. So brain drain is real. It is going to affect us mightily down the road. But the problem is most Americans don't see those effects right away. When you're talking about people that are doing the basic science, that research into healthcare and other technologies that make our lives better far down the road, we don't miss it. We don't notice for a long period. And then we blame the wrong people who's in power then, rather than the people who caused the problem that the Trump administration is causing right now. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's being a proud husband of a pediatric emergency room doctor. One of the examples of that is the return of measles. And that we're dealing, in Atlanta, South Carolina has had a big outbreak of measles. I also just read that in one of the detention centers, one of the ICE detention centers in Texas, there's a measles outbreak. And he unfortunately is trained in measles, but a lot of the people that he one of the things Joe does is train the new residents and fellows that come into the system. They weren't teaching measles in medical school, right? Because it had been eradicated for the most part because of vaccination. And so they're literally, and he's so quite honestly, there's people that don't, there's doctors, pediatricians, pediatric emergency room doctors that don't even recognize the symptoms because they were never trained on this disease. And until that impacts your child or your school or your community, you think, oh, okay, measles is back. But it's like once it impacts, once we lose track of measles again and it becomes part of more people's daily routine. And it's interesting. I think you might remember, Bree, my dad was a mayor after he retired from being a fireman and policeman, became a mayor. And he was the one who really taught me the term NIMBY, not in my backyard, right? And I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of that going on in the United States right now. And until it absolutely hits your house or your community or your kitchen table, you think it isn't important. And we already talked about the fact that we're in the week, right after the Iran war has started, whatever we're calling this. And I've been saying to people, so many people are saying, oh, well, that's the Middle East, the Middle East, right? Oh, the Middle East, it's crazy. There's always something going on, right? And I'm like, okay, you're going to feel it because the Strait of Hormuz is now closed, and that's 20% of the oil and natural gas. I think a higher percent of natural gas, actually. So are you going to be upset when your gasoline goes up or when your heating oil goes up for home? Like, some days I'm really trying to figure out, Bree, and I'm sure you on the campaign trail, and I want to ask a question about it. And I'm like, what is it going to take for some people to wake up? Like, is it going to be gasoline? Is it going to be, I hate to say measles, but like, what is it going to be? Because I don't want another 9/11. I don't want another something to happen on our soil. I do not want that. Please, Lord, hear me say that. But I sometimes wonder what it's going to take to make people more aware of the situation.
Yeah, we are a very reactive society, and it is disaster that usually makes us change something. And so you want to see change, you want to fight for change, and ideally we do that through a positive vision. But when bad things happen, when people get mad enough, they take action. And often that means it's an economic impact. It is the price of gas spiking. It is people being unable to afford childcare. It is people choosing to go uninsured in the hope that they stay healthy.
Yes.
That's a problem for all of us. So we don't want things to get bad, but when things get bad, we often actually drive change through that catalyst.
We do. Okay, so let's flip to the campaign because you've been, how long has it been since you've declared? Is it a month yet?
It's been a month and a half on the trail.
Wow. Yeah. And full disclosure, I was a donor. Full disclosure to my listeners, I was a donor. We're going to put that up at the end where you can donate. But so tell us about how it's going, what you've learned, what surprised you. I have so many questions, but like I know you've been on the road for 6 weeks. You've been working.
Yeah. There are some things about campaigning that are fantastic, and there are many things about campaigning that are awful. And the one thing that really has stuck with me so much is that the barriers to entry into running for public office at any level are high. And much higher at some levels than others, certainly.
Yes.
But most of them are people wondering, do I have the skills, the time, the money to do this kind of thing? What will the effects be on me and my family? And then also, can we actually afford any of this? The amount of time politicians, particularly at the federal level, have to spend raising money, asking for funds is ridiculous. And for me to see this as almost being at the bottom of the economic ladder that can say this might even be remotely feasible for me to give it a shot is not the way it should be. It's not the way we set up our democracy, where it should have been that anyone can enter public life, do it for a little while, and then return home to do something else. But we have made a system that says money is speech. We have allowed unlimited outside expenditures to come into these things, and to get your message out in a House campaign to 800,000 people, that takes a lot of resources. So we spend too much of our time trying to gather those resources than to really listen to people, to understand what the issues are, and to formulate the solutions for those issues. So I think campaign finance reform is going to be a big issue that I take forward, of how do we try and make it so that anyone can say, I can too. What can I do as a candidate? What can I do down the road as an elected official to lower the barriers for others to run for office in the future? That's been one of the more surprising things that I've learned.
Amazing. And do you have to run a primary and then the general? Is there a primary before the general? Okay.
Yep, there is. And that's about giving people the choice. And if we want to demand change, particularly on the Democratic side of politics, yet continue to elect the same people, the same views that have always been there, we never get there. So primaries are important for people to pick the best candidate to represent them, even if in the group of primary candidates, people are going to have broad agreement on 50% or more of the issues.
And how many people are running in your district in the primary? Do you know?
In my particular race right now, there's only 2 of us. And so I expect it's going to stay that way as an opportunity for people to pick the best candidate. And I hope I'm providing the vision of where we can be, of how to best fight back against this Trump administration that says I should be that candidate.
For sure. And you've been doing listening sessions, though. I've seen that on your social media. You've been sitting at proverbial tables in these towns and stuff. I mean, I've seen the pictures. What are the constituents saying to you? Like, what are you hearing from the constituents?
Yeah, it's been interesting because this district is so broad now. I describe it as stretching from Great Falls National Park to Shenandoah National Park so it's like the DC suburbs that are in Northern Virginia all the way out to the Shenandoah Valley along the West Virginia border. So it's very suburban in some places and very rural agricultural tourism in some areas. So there are very different issues, but across the board, people are talking about the illegality of this administration, that no one should be afraid of the government, affordability issues. But when we talk out here where I am today, and I just came literally from one of those sessions, listening to folks in the small town of Sperryville, right on the edge of Shenandoah National Park, we're talking about what are the inputs that are driving small family farms out of business, and how is it just large agribusiness that can thrive? What are the unique transportation requirements and the infrastructure that is necessary in parts of the country like this to make it economically viable going forward? And also, and this is an across the district issue, what are the issues related to data centers? Because my district and some of the surrounding areas has some of the highest concentration of data centers in the planet. What is that doing to our environment, to people's livability? And while that technology is necessary, how do we have the investment that allows us to site it appropriately? To make sure that our power grid can support it. So to me, that's one of our huge challenges, where in the 20th century, we invested in the infrastructure that moved people and goods around our country. In the 21st, it has to be about moving power and data. What can we do to invest in a truly 21st century grid in both those aspects? Fascinating.
Okay, you've learned a lot in 6 weeks, my friend. I mean, that's
it is diving in.
It's baptism by fire again. It's forged in fire. I mean,
absolutely. And so it is really great to understand that, to make sure that I am representing all the interests of the district, not just the suburban area that I happen to live in.
Okay. All right. One more question about the campaign. When you went to your wife and kids, was there any hesitation in the family about you pursuing this?
Yes, immensely.
Yeah.
And mostly from my wife, who hoped that I would have taken a quiet 9 to 5 and that we could have been as far from the spotlight as possible. But this goes back to my reasons for running before. And honey, I love you, but I am willing to trade short-term security and economic stability for our family for the long-term outcomes that I believe are important, not just for our kids, and maybe we'll have grandkids someday, but for everyone's kids and all the future generations. Because if we don't take that risk now, we can't get there. And I totally understand the need and her concern that for me, particularly as a trans candidate, I might get shot. You know, that is a very real fear. But if we don't, what are we leaving it to?
Right.
And as for my kids,
candidates don't have protection, right? You don't have a protection detail.
We certainly have to think about security, but if we want it, we have to pay for it.
Pay for it, right.
Which makes it an even more challenging thing sometimes as a candidate to think about security. There's no Secret Service out there protecting congressional candidates.
Yeah, exactly.
But I will share one funny story that with how my kids reacted to it. My oldest was like, whatever. You go do you. You make sure that you take over the government peacefully and respectably. And I'm like, okay, got it, buddy. I appreciate that.
And what age is that child?
He is 17.
Okay.
My daughter is 13, and she's like, well, I think you have parties, right? When you're a candidate, and at some of these parties, there's cheese, and I will go with you if I can have some cheese, because she was a little mad. She's like, you're not getting paid this year? How are we going to afford cheese? So she's very food driven and knows really where this is all about.
Good but you know what? That's an honest reaction.
Yep.
I like my cheese. Like my cheese. I want cheese.
The greatest day of her life was probably a Thanksgiving party we had when she was about 6 years old, and someone brought a charcuterie tray with like 7 different cheeses on it. And we have this picture of her just staring at it like, oh my God, this is the greatest moment of my life.
That's the German heritage. There's some there is some German heritage. That cheese thing is coming out. I grew up in the Midwest. I know where my cheese thing came from. So I know. All right. I'm going to ask you some of my philosophical questions here. What question do you think leaders should be asking themselves right now that they're not? So when I'm talking about leaders in general, leaders in business, government, nonprofit, like what question do you think leaders should be asking themselves that they're not right now?
That's actually a really challenging question, because there are so many things that we should be asking about what we don't know. But I think that's kind of the question is, what am I missing? Yeah. And am I spending enough time thinking about the context that I'm operating in? What inputs do I need to make good decisions that I might not be getting from? And if you are leading a team in these situations, how are you making sure that your team has access to you and the knowledge that it's okay to bring you ideas that may not be what you're expecting? And that you're not going to create an environment where they feel unsafe or uncomfortable in bringing you a different solution. So be open to as many inputs as possible and think about, what am I missing?
Brilliant. Okay, next one. This is part of the practical. This could take hours, but if you were talking to young Bree many, many moons ago, and mentoring yourself, because I think a lot about my generation now, especially in the queer community, I'm an elder, and I feel like there's a lot of mentoring and giving back. But if you were mentoring a younger version of yourself, what would you say, knowing what you know now?
You don't know how amazing it's going to be when you get to be yourself. That weight that is lifted when you get to be authentic, you don't even realize how heavy it was until it's gone. And how much more energy you have to dedicate into the relationships around you or the task in front of you that you were instead using to protect yourself. And I did that for nearly 40 years. And it has been such a gift to be my authentic self. And I see that in so many people. And this is everyone. This is not just queer people that experience this. This is everyone who finally gets to say, this is me, and I'm going to show it to everyone rather than to hide this part of myself from people.
Amen. Amen. For you, it was 40. For me, I was 25. We talked about it on your podcast. I actually, when I was standing in the closet today, thinking about him seeing Bree, you can see I wore my Be True sweatshirt, because I think we have this kindred spirit in embracing authenticity, and that it's so much lighter on the other side. The fear before embracing that authenticity is so dark, and it's just so much lighter on the other side. So much lighter on the other side. I have one final wrap-up question I'm going to ask you, but before I do that, where do they follow you? How can they do campaign donations? Where do we get the Bree story? Because I want our listeners and viewers to know.
Yeah, absolutely. Go to our website at teambree.com. You're able to sign up to volunteer, to contribute, to find more about my policy positions, to help us out in so many ways. That's where to go, teambree.com.
Amazing. Amazing. And we'll make sure that's in the show notes for everybody. And I'll put it in the social media and on our website and all that kind of stuff. So we have, at Ask for an Answer with Jim Fielding, we have a signature closing question. And it's interesting because I feel like, of course, you've been amazing as a guest, and I knew you would be because you've shared so much with us. But the signature closing question is, what's the one question you wish someone would ask you that they haven't?
Always the most difficult question, because when I ask it to people, it's what question should I have asked you?
Yes,
that
exactly.
I haven't asked you.
Yeah.
And so it is one of those toughest. But I think the question I want to be asked, and that I wish I had a better answer to, is how do we build the bridges that connect us, that allow us to talk about our shared humanity? So really the question is, how do we get away from preaching to the choir? How do we get out of our
Get out of the
bubbles?
Echo chamber. Exactly.
Yeah,
get out
where
of the
we're
echo
only
chamber.
talking to one another, because there are things that connect us across that. And we saw it at the Olympics with sports. You can find the fact that your neighbor who you disagree with on everything loves the same restaurant that you do. And if you can find that one touch point, you can build something off of that. So to me, it's really about, where do we go to find these things? And that is the thing that I am searching for every day. As I say, be open to what you don't know. That's the thing that I am searching for. Where are those avenues that allow us to connect over shared values? And I'll give you one more little story, because I think this is important when we start talking about, trans people, and why would I ever connect with a trans person? They're totally different. They think about different things than I do. They have concepts that are so different. And I want to just say, there is no more fundamentally American story than the trans story. Because as a nation, who are we if not assigned British at birth? And then we literally fought a war to come up with our identity that said, we're Americans, we can be better. So what is that thing that's going to connect all of us, that says, this is a common piece of our humanity, and we can build on that and move forward?
Oh my gosh. Well, that's the mic drop moment right there. That is brilliant. Thank you so much for doing this. I know how busy you are. You've been so gracious in giving us this time and in scheduling this. You know that I'm doing everything I can do, cheering you on and watching social media every day. I can't vote in Virginia, but I'm voting. I'm metaphorically voting. And thank you. And just go do what you're doing. I mean, you are making such an impact on the world. And I just keep feeling that because I know there's got to be some hard moments and nervous moments, but know that you are appreciated and that your impact is being felt.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Your support means a ton to me.
Thank
It was a pleasure joining you and being a part of this. Great success with the show, I hope, and look forward to joining you again sometime.
All right, for sure. Thank you. Thanks for spending this time with us on Ask for an Answer. If this conversation sparks something for you, don't just nod and move on. Take one idea, one question, one uncomfortable and bring it into your next meeting, your next one-on-one, or your next big decision. That's how this becomes a practice, not just a podcast. If you're leading a team, a classroom, a company, or just your own next chapter, you don't have to have it all figured out. You do have to be willing to listen, to ask better questions, and to create the kind of safety where people will actually tell you what they see. If this episode was useful, share it with someone who's in the arena with you. And if you want more tools, stories, and real talk leadership moments, make sure you follow the show and leave a review so others can find us. I'm Jim Fielding. Thank you for being here, for leading with less armor and more intention. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep asking for an answer.